Really cool background. Is that a Bansky?
Well, it's not a Banksy, but it's...
That's like, you
but
have
it
more
is
money than I
a-
thought.
Right. It's not a Banksy.
You're doing
but
really
it is
well.
a Banksy. Yeah, I could turn that into a hospital if I wanted to. Yeah. Why can I own an ER, right? But I can't own a microhospital. All of us, like, who should run? Should it be administrators or should it be doctors that run hospitals?
So tell me this, like, okay, a physician cannot own a hospital. A PE group can own a hospital.
So you could be a doctor and own it, right? There's, you feel better going there. Like, it's not a job anymore, right? I mean, it's mine. I'm building something that's mine. And of course the money follows, right?
Let's bring Adriano in. Let's open a micro hospital. Walk me through high level. How'd you do it?
You could build a hospital in 6 months, man.
5 guys together, you go to the bank, you get a good idea, you can pull that off.
Let's do it, guys. Let's fucking do
Here's-
it.
2 vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
All right, guys. Welcome to another episode of La Vida de Flow. It is just an absolute honor and pleasure to have today Adriano here in the show. Not only because I think Adriano is an entrepreneur at heart, he's part of the Cool Kid Club here, but also because he is one of the most amazing people I know, and I feel very blessed to call him my good, if not probably my best friend in the world. So, Adriano, thank you for carving some time and coming and talking to us here at La Life of Flow.
My pleasure to join you guys.
Really cool background. Is that a Bansky?
Well, it's not a Banksy, but it's...
That's like, you
but
have
it
more
is
money than I thought.
Right. It's not a Banksy.
You're doing
but
really
it is
well.
a Banksy. Yeah. I could turn that into a hospital if I wanted to. Yeah.
All right. Well, Adriano and I know each other back in the days of Casa Grande, Arizona. So I remember one of my first gigs was to go and cover this hospital between, if you were to drive from Tucson, Arizona to Phoenix, right in the middle, there's this small town called Casa Grande. And that's where actually my cousin Ramon was is a phenomenal robotic surgeon, MIS, out there. He worked and he connected me there because they didn't have a vascular surgeon. Anyway, long story long, Adriano was introduced to me as one of the hospitalists there, and essentially fucked my entire career up because he essentially made it seem to me at the time, oh my God, there's nothing better than working with a hospitalist. Because it was like, literally, dude, what do you need? I'll take care of it. And I would just do my case and end the story. I wouldn't get any calls. Then later I realized he was a very unique person, because obviously most of them are actually super needy and call you 1,000 times a day. But anyway, that's how we met. And then that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship now today. And then both of us relocated to Houston for completely different reasons. And we ended up in the same town. And so our friendship carried over, and the rest is history.
Was it at the same time or was it different time
Yeah,
periods?
pretty much at the same time, right? It was like a
I
few
think
months
like
apart.
a month. A couple months. And when we met, I had zero plans. I don't know if you had actual plans of coming here.
No.
But my wife and I made the decision probably overnight. Like, hey, let's go. We actually just bought a house in Phoenix. We had a house for 6 months, and we decided to go to Texas because my family was here. And I wasn't around my family probably at that point this is probably a typical timeline for us physicians, but I think it was like 12, 13 years that I was away from family, from military and then med school and residency. The years add up, right? So we just decided, we're like, oh, let's be close to my family for the first time in a long time. And it was Ramon that is like, hey, by the way, Dr. Montero moved there. And I was like, well, okay, this is great. We have a friend. So we connected one night and basically reestablished the relationship then. And that's been 10 years.
What brought you to Houston?
So initially it was mostly family. Not really any particular, it was pretty early in my career. board certified in family, worked as a hospitalist initially. I never took the traditional route of getting like a job, right? I did locums. Um, Not any particular reason. There was plenty of job offers. I had some ER offers, some hospitalist offers. But I was like, I kind of like the flexibility a little bit. So I did the flexibility and it actually worked out really well, which allowed me to make the decision pretty much overnight. I called my same local company and I think I had a job in Texas 3 weeks later that, I had a spot. So it was a pretty easy transition for me.
So Adriano's boarded in family medicine, then has done most of his work in initially as a hospitalist, but then granted that opportunity here in Texas, got a ton of exposure to the world of emergency medicine, and not only the world of emergency medicine, but then the business of emergency medicine. And I would say that very rapidly, um, I think there's human traits for a lot of us that have had to out migrate and adapt in different conditions that make us highly adaptable. That it doesn't matter, what you throw at us. You give us enough time, we'll understand and we'll crack the code. And I think he's got that personality, and I think that's one thing that we share is that 5 years ago I didn't understand anything about tax shielding when you're an entrepreneur. Now 5 years later, I have a huge understanding of what that means, or a huge understanding of what managing a business is, because it's self protection, right? It's it's being able to survive in, in the atmosphere in which you're sent in. But anyway, and I say that because I do think that dude, I think that one of the things that you do best is you take problems or you take circumstances and you analyze and you study and you learn, and then you react to them, and then you give Adriano a few months into something, and like he'll be the best at it. And so I think very quickly you essentially became the essentially the leader of this emergency department group of people. You learn how to do notes, you learn how to crack the code, you learn how to optimize your billing, you know how to optimize your collections, and then that started growing. And with that, obviously, you started learning a lot about the business of emergency medicine. And I think that would be a cool topic for us to um, uh, rant for a little bit
Yeah,
about what that means, because as vascular surgeons, we graduate, we either take an academic job, we try to open a private practice, or nowadays more than before, I think we're acting a little bit more like ED folks, which is there's so much more locums positions, and being able to work, half of the year for about the same salary you would get. Point in case, Lucas is out there in the middle of nowhere doing some locums right now because it allows him the flexibility to do a lot of things. But we really never understood or cared to understand the business of ED. Yet we see ED, freestanding EDs, or urgent cares popping up left and right, and it's obviously a very lucrative business if ran appropriately. But maybe you can give me a little bit of context of where
yeah,
that started, when it started, if there's any, were there any changes in the healthcare environment at the time that allowed for this to become a rather lucrative, and then maybe where we're at. Let's kind of work through that.
sure.
You
Yeah.
know,
So, I mean, my career started in locums, right? And I, learned medicine kind of backwards, right? So in residency, I went to an unopposed residency. So we ran the neuro ICU, the OB floor, the hospitalist floor. So there was only 7 of us a year. We ran everything. Okay. We did more ER shifts than any other family program. We did more ICU time. I mean, we delivered probably over every resident, probably 300 to 500 kids. Most of us were C-section certified by the time we got out because we worked all with private, either OB or surgeons. Everybody was private in that hospital, right? So they only staffed sound physicians for hospitalists. That was it. Okay. And everybody else was private. So once I got out of there, and I got into the locums world, I had a knack for number one, admissions, right? Because I learned how to write good notes, right? And then number two, what is OBS, what is inpatient, working with case managers, right? So when I say I learned medicine backwards, I started to look at it from the insurance perspective, right? So, and it goes hand in hand with like prior authorizations or why a patient is in the hospital, right? So I mastered the DRG, right? So if you are bringing someone in through the emergency or an inpatient, right, and they're coming in with pneumonia, right, and you learn that you can admit for observation, but inpatient, they have to have bilateral pneumonia. So this person is short of breath. You can't get an O2 sat below 88 walk in, they're at 89, so they don't qualify for hypoxia. But then all of a sudden you could say, well, intractable pain, right? You gave Toradol and Tylenol, and then you could bring them in for observation and you start to learn your DRG, you start to learn everything, right? But at the same time, you learn what's the minimum. If I'm saying that you need to be admitted and I don't order a sputum culture or a blood culture, now your insurance is denying, this claim in the hospital or the inpatient. So I learned that realm of medicine, right? Which, by the way, is also very important, right? Like you can see a patient, they look okay. Why didn't you order a blood culture before starting antibiotics, right? If the insurance company is telling you that it's necessary, right, then it's for a reason, right? Like it's your train of thought, which is now what we call the MDM, medical decision making in the ER, that they don't do so much in the hospital. It's like, why'd you order a CT? Why'd you order an X-ray? Um, and that kind of guided a little bit of business associated with medicine, but at the same time, making sure that you provide quality care and the minimum that's necessary for patients to come in and be treated, right? I started doing that as a hospitalist. And then when I got um, through that process, right, when we first started, a chest pain patient can come into the hospital, they're going to get, triple tropes, right? They're going to get an echo. And most of them, got a stress test that day and went home. That's changed completely. Like in the hospital now, everything is going strictly outpatient, 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 right? You get 2 or 3 tropes. You may not even leave the ER anymore. You may not even enter OBS anymore. You might get 2 tropes in 4 hours and go home. And I was really bothered by that. Like it actually really bothered me because when you remember why you came into medicine is to, not only to treat a patient, but also it's like, I'm going to send you home, right? And when I send you home, what did I really do for you? Right? Like if it's your family member and then, here's your 2 tropes that are normal, you need to have these 5 tests done immediately. Right? And they're going home and maybe you got them an appointment, right? But that's in a month, right? And now you're sitting there as an individual saying to yourself, man, I went in for chest pain and I really don't know what's going on. I just had normal labs, right? So I had a blessing to work with a physician here that he was the owner. He was retired at this point and he owned an emergency room. And he actually found me on LinkedIn, interviewed me, gave me a job in his ER. And, we started to kind of start that process of he let me, what is it that you think we need? And I said, well, I'd like a cardiologist, and this is, by the way, a standalone emergency room. Okay. So he found me a cardiologist that would take all my patients every morning, the next morning at 8 a.m. Right. So I would do the tropes. We didn't have echo or stress at this point. This facility this is a standalone emergency room. But I had a cardiologist that would see my patients every morning at 8 a.m. They would get an echo and a stress test. The customer service went through the roof, right? We took that place from probably 6 to 8 patients a day. And then by the time that I left that position, we were probably at like 20 to 30. Okay.
Okay.
And strictly because it's word of mouth, right? You're starting to produce it. You're starting to, get results for people who come in, right? And this was in 2017, right? So this is just before they started popping up in every corner, right? Now, at that time, with reimbursement, and we could talk in network or out of network, but essentially most standalone emergency rooms, if they saw about 8 people, the profit for the owner was approximately $750,000 to $1.1 million a year. And that's 8 patients a day.
8 patients a day.
8 patients a day. Yeah. Now, what can you provide those individuals now has also changed, right? So he ended up selling that place because, well, you're selling at a 3 to 6 multiple, right?
Wow.
And it went from about $750 a year to about $4 to $6 million a year, $7 million a year. So he sold. And then I took another position as director with a much larger company. It's actually owned by a hedge fund, private hedge fund.
Okay.
And they had 4 facilities at that time. And I went to their flagship facility, which was a 9-bed ER, and they had an empty shell on top, right? And I was like, man, this is perfect, right? Because I immediately saw the need to do a little bit more. And the only way to do that is I need inpatient beds, right?
Mm.
So I need to drive my traffic. I need to be able to keep my traffic. And then I need to have a specialist wanting to come and see my patients there, or again, 8 a.m., you're getting your echo, your stress or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so I built it into a micro hospital, right? So we had a four inpatient, right? Which that also spikes what it is the facility makes, right? Because now you're not just doing, short obs. You can keep a lot of patients, right? So even without surgery, even without, any of those, major specialties, vascular, etc. There's a lot of sick people that just need antibiotics and fluids, guys, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so you're keeping for observation, you're keeping some inpatients. The average reimbursement for an observation is between 3,000 and 5,000, right? And the way that kind of works is you're kind of deducting from what you do, right? So you ob someone, whatever your cost is of antibiotics, you're not itemized billing at that point. You get like a flat rate for observation. Same as inpatient, right? Outside of procedures, an inpatient's about 10 to 15,000 per day, right? Um, that's how, so you get yourself a 4-bed inpatient. You can decide to take Medicare or not, right? You could stay private, in network or out of network. But the beauty of that is the fact that everybody came for you under an emergency status, right? So in network or out of network, this kind of flies out the window. The only difference is maybe a larger deductible for most insurances. But, as far as qualifying somebody to come in, it's not problematic. But that facility, we went from seeing, 15 to 18, right? Now it's averaging almost 40 to 50 patients a day. We have a hospitalist staff that sees the patients in rounds. And we had tele, right? Because it was a bit out there. We had telecardiology, which helped a lot, right? And they would get their appointments and get their treatments the next day. But it was more of just like an inpatient, small micro hospital with 4 beds. We would still need to transfer for surgeries, transfers for anything like that. But you got to keep a predominant number. Probably 80% of the people who needed, who came in for OBS were able to stay, right? Then I left
So,
that
Adriano,
post.
let me interject. Let me interject real quick here.
Sure.
Just from a fundamental business structure, like one of the things that it seems to me like the promotion of health in America is zero, right? Coming from Costa Rica, where Social Security is the mainstream of healthcare. A huge component of what they do is they have these primary care clinics that really take care of their people by doing just labs and basic stuff. In America, it feels like most people don't even have a primary care physician, and they use the emergency department as
Correct.
that spot where they have to, go to when shit hits the fan, because there's no prevention of care, and the system has just been not great at creating very basic care for people. And so I think, from a business standpoint, you have a broken system that in a way creates a massive funnel of patients through this care, delivery of care platform. Second, to your point before, is I'm breaking my head constantly here in a site of service 11, an outpatient clinic, to be able to see a patient, because that patient is out of network and maybe they don't have out of network um, services in their insurance company. And so it makes it virtually impossible for me to see them unless they want to cash pay, which is a whole different ballpark game. But the moment that you say, well, it's an emergency care, then you said it, it's out the window. Who cares if it's in network or out of network? Potentially the patient is going to get a bigger invoice. And we all know that it's not what we make our projections or our budgets on, because ultimately we have no control on who's actually going to pay or not that particular bill that hits their house. So I think that's a huge component of why this is a market that works. And it sounds by what you're saying that it should be a sustainable business on its own, just to own and operate one. But it it seems to me like a lot of guys have jumped into it, and just obviously knowing you and having conversation, a lot of the ED physicians themselves that have that entrepreneur bug in them have actually gone to open their own sites. Is the intention of those people that have decided to open their own places to just keep that and make that million and a half? Or is most of people's play an intention to grow the EBITDA of that ED with an intention to, sell it to the next best buyer, um, at a multiple of whatever, 6 or 7, I don't know what they sell at, but is that the play that people wanna do, is create the volume and then sell it to somebody else? Or are most people just interested in owning their own spot and staying there because it creates an appropriate margin for their family?
So, I mean, that's like probably the best question on the planet when you involve, burnout, right? I mean, I would answer it first by, why did I love the first ER gig as much as I did? Okay. Number one, we do 24-hour shifts, right? So you take a typical doctor schedule where you're working 20 to 24 days a month, to now you're going to make the same money working 6 to 8 days a month. Because technically it's 16, right? You see where I'm going with that, right?
Yeah.
So who cares how tired you are if you work every Monday and you work every other Thursday in your month? We've all done it, right? Like, how brutal is that really? Like, not to mention quality of life, right? So for 22 days or 24 days a month, I get to take my kid to school and pick them up. How many doctors do you know can say that?
Mm-mm.
Very, very little, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's huge.
So in the ED world, one of the ironies of this is, the second I make it a micro hospital, the laws kick in. I can own an ER all day as a doctor. Why? Why can I own an ER, right? But I can't own a micro hospital? Because it's a conflict of interest if I admit somebody, right? At least that's what the administration is saying, right? So it's a conflict of interest for me to own a micro hospital, for me to continue care. Not that I'm doing it, I can hire a hospitalist to do it, right? So, I mean, obviously you have to meet criteria, you have to do all of that. It's scrutinized. But I can own an ER, I can own 100 ERs. I cannot own one micro hospital directly under my name. Right? So now, with that said, okay, look at everything that you're struggling with, right? You're struggling because you're outpatient. Okay. All of us, like, who should run? Should it be administrators or should it be doctors that run hospitals? Right. So if you're a family member, right, or you're a patient, what do you want to get done? I want to get done the things that I need to get done. Right. And the three of us in the room are physicians. We're the worst patients on the planet. Right. I need to get this. I literally have a lacerated lung as we speak, and I've been putting off surgery for months from multiple rib fractures. Okay. Like, yeah. So, I mean, we're terrible patients. Right. So, you can call me tomorrow. You can call me right now and you can say, hey, I'm having chest pain. Right. Well, I bring you come to my facility, which, by the way, when you look at it, you'd be like, how the hell does he do this in this building? I have an 18,000 square foot building where I have a 7-bed ER, I have 4 inpatients, and I have an OR and pre-op, post-op. Okay. I have an orthopedic surgeon. I have a neurosurgeon. I have a urologist. I have a cardiologist. I have hospitalists. I have teleneurology, right? I got one of the new Siemens CT scans. So I do calcium score CT, CT angios, right? I have ultrasound, of course, and I have an MRI trailer in the back. Okay. I can bring in an individual, and what I can accomplish in 8 hours, it would take you between 5 and 9 doctor visits to accomplish. Not to mention, you're having blood in your stool. Most places you go to an ER, okay, here you go. Here's your GI follow-up. now it's a month, and they're usually coming back to my ER because they still have blood in their stool. Like, we don't know what's going on, but their hemoglobin was, above 10. So when you involve physicians, right? Like, the biggest problem with our lives is how much time we can adequately spend, number one, with a human being. And then number two, for it to be we have to think financially. We have to pay bills. We have to go home. We have to spend time with family. So if you erase the bureaucracy of admin and you have patients that are coming through, right? And in 8 hours or 12 hours or overnight, right, you can get individuals taken care of. I think it's a shame that more doctors are not owning facilities. I think it's shameful, right? Because this patient needs this. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody needs, a stent, for PVD the second they walk in through the emergency room, right? But why is it that you can't simply continue care, right? Because, by the way, when you put that stent in our network or out of network, the administration, the hospital is making the money off the OR. Doesn't matter if it gets approved or not. So if you can get good physicians in one facility, right, where now you are sharing, what happens. And by the way, everything that I'm talking about, it's stuff that, you qualify for it, right? I mean, the inpatient and outpatient doesn't mean that the patient doesn't qualify for a stent or doesn't qualify for an ultrasound. You're just like, there are metrics that we have to meet for, and you don't just get a pacer because we feel like it, right? But why is it that the circle, makes you have to see 100 patients, right, a day versus you can see 50 and you can have an incredible life at home, and not to mention it's the customer service of the human being. I can spend an hour with a patient in the ER, even if I'm busy, or 30 minutes, because I know all the things that, hey, just be patient with me. You're going to spend the day with me, but you're going to get all these things done. And I have now 4 or 5 times that I can see them in the ER or OBS, right? And the families are ecstatic because we got everything done for them, right? It decreases burnout because, my God, I don't feel like I'm working. I'm helping people. This is what I signed up for to go to med school, right? And patients are leaving with everything that they need, like across the board with the system that I built now.
But what is this
and
difference to
So-
to understand the comparison? So you worked, you came in first locums, you did locums work, then you moved to a bigger company, then you essentially started building in your mind, I guess, a vision of what this could look like. And now, more contemporary, and where you're at now, because obviously you've vertically ascended from, hey, you're a needy guy, to you were a managing partner, to you were part of this bigger, and now you're essentially are you the
chief of
CMO or
staff,
the medical
chief of
chief of
staff.
staff
Yeah.
for a hospital? Is it a hospital or is it an emergency department?
So it's
This
what's
current
considered
entity.
a micro. It's considered a micro hospital, right?
And what does that mean? What is a micro hospital? If you don't mind explaining.
I mean, a micro hospital usually is less than like 10 beds, right? And that's probably used loosely. You can call it a hospital at 10 beds or 15 beds, 20 beds, but they're just these little, not major centers. You're not a level 2 trauma, right? You don't have trauma surgery. So you're kind of a little bit further out from the major centers, right? So they call them micro hospitals.
Okay. So tell me this, like, okay, a physician cannot own a hospital. A PE group can own a hospital. What is a PE group? Can a
So-
PE group just be physicians with money and own the hospital as a PE group?
All right. So what you get in is, do you have an active, so having the name MD doesn't necessarily mean that you're practicing in the hospitals, right? So
Okay.
you could be a doctor and own it, right? Now,
Mhm.
usually these physician groups are the same thing as administrators, right? So
Yeah.
they own the hospital, but they don't practice at the hospital, right?
Okay.
So you can do it that way.
Yeah.
Another version is you do a 501A, right? Which is a nonprofit, which just means you get a bigger salary, right? And therefore you can staff it that way. There's other ways where you can do it through a trust, right? A lot of people right now, they do it through the land, right? So you don't own the hospital, you own the land, right? So they pay rent, so the hospital at the 501A is paying a larger rent, right? So let's say quarterly, you profits go up. They, instead of paying 10,000 for rent, now they're paying 20,000 for rent. And that's distributed through the owners of the land, right?
Yeah.
So there's ways around it, right? The problem is that I got lucky, right? So I got lucky where I had an owner that saw my worth, right? Like he knows what I'm bringing to the table, right? He sees a surgeon that's like me, and he actually pays you, right? Because that's the tricky part, right? St. Luke's, Methodist, Memorial, they can have. Why do you need to go to 5 different facilities to be profitable? Well, because that one person doesn't care about you. They're just going to hire 10 other ones at a lower rate. They don't see the value of the customer service and what you're bringing. They don't. They really don't. Like everybody's expendable, and we're all expendable, boys. Like obviously, but if you're someone who's really taking care of an individual, right? Why is it that there's a standard metric of salary? Right? I mean, you're bringing, if we talk about IDR, I mean, you could be bringing into $100,000 to $150,000 a case for the hospital. Why are you paying me $550 to $800? Now, again, it's not about, oh, you got to pay me $10 million. That's not what I mean. But why am I killing myself going to 5 different places? And it's mostly just because someone doesn't see your value. They don't treat you that way. They treat you just as a regular employee. And that filters to the patients, guys. Like it does, because you can only spend so much time if you're operating in 2 or 3 different facilities. I mean, that's my killer, right? Like to me, I work at one place and I'm passionate about that place and I kill myself for that place. But I got lucky, right? I got lucky that someone saw my potential and he's like, why would I even think I can get 3 of these people when I could just have one and we grow together, and that's probably one of the most shameful parts of healthcare, right? You're just a number. And
so did this micro hospital start as an ED?
Sure did.
I mean, I know that you haven't been there since its conception, but
I got there 3 months after.
Oh, okay. So was it first when you were there? Was it just the ED?
So we applied for Medicare, right? So that's a gateway to say, like, what are the steps of opening a micro hospital, right? So
walk me through that. And then just I was here. I like ChatGPT. What's a micro hospital? And essentially, it just says it's a hospital that provides many of the services in a very small context, anywhere from 2 to 15 beds, and it says they're designed for improved access to care in an underserved area, avoid the cost of building a full hospital, capture emergency and inpatient volume locally, and serve as a referral hub to maybe larger hospitals. And interestingly enough, the 2 major owners in America of micro hospitals are HCA and Common Spirit. So they go around buying these hospitals because it eventually then, I guess, feeds their community. So therein lays the kind of business of, okay, well, why would I want, as a business owner, I'm in an ED, why would I do a micro? Because probably the market for a micro hospital is actually pretty good, right? You may be able to go out there and talk to Methodist or HCA eventually at some point. I don't know where you guys are at. We'll talk about that soon, but that could be that exit strategy. But I keep thinking with my business to understand the modality. But let's go back to when you started 3 months in. It was an ED.
So I started 3 months in, right? And so, number one, what does it take to open? So you say, what does it take to open a standalone ER? Well, you need an X-ray, you need a CT, you can lease it, a couple $1,000s a month. You're going to need a tech for lab. Now, most of the stuff for lab, you're doing point of care labs. So it's CBC, MET, liver, CMP, troponins, dimer, urinalysis. So you're going to do low to moderate complexity where you don't need a full on lab tech, right? You can train an MA, you can train them to do low to moderate, right? Usually those machines are like a Piccolos. So it's not that expensive considering they go by volume, right? So if you're seeing 6 patients a day, the machines are free. They give you the machine as long as you buy the cartridges from them, right? So it's an expense you don't really have, right? If that makes sense. So you're able to open pretty decently with, the doctors probably, the smaller the location, the doctor is the most expensive component of payroll, right? The average low volume, which I would put at 10 or 12 patients a day, The ER physicians usually work in 24 hours. You're paying somewhere between 155 to 175 an hour. Once it jumps to 18, you're going to 175 to 200, right? And then once you cross that 25 to 30 is when you go from, 190 to 225, depending how close you are to a city, how far away to a city, you can get up to about 250, right? But outside of nursing, fixed costs on a lease of a CT scan and an X-ray, ultrasound machine, you're outsourcing radiology. So you pay about an X-ray is probably like $50. A CT scan is around $130. And if you have MRI, it's approximately 180 per read, right? You can have your own radiology tech, or you can also bring those in as locums, depending on volume. They're not that expensive comparatively to hire your own. It's about the same cost. That usually saves you with, they usually come attached to a radiology group. So usually that's why you do have them as locums. You have a radiology group that reads. They'll bring in their LifeTrack system, their servers. You're not spending a lot of money on servers. Basically, they bring the package that they want there. Contracts of that are usually a little bit longer. You're going to do like a 2 to 3 year contract versus with most physicians is a 1 year contract. And you're up and running, right? I mean, you got street credit, right? Now, what insurances do you take? Most of them are out of network, right? You cannot take Medicare in a standalone unless you have inpatient. You can't. They did break that rule during COVID for improved access. But unless you are affiliated with a hospital, so that's why HCA does it, because they can take Medicare, because they could transfer you to their sister hospital, right? But the second that you do inpatient, then you have the right to apply for Medicare. And Medicare is not a great payer, but it pays, and it pays quick, right? It pays really quick, and it's depending on the area that you're in, it could be vital to success, right? Because they're usually sicker, so you can obs or bring an inpatient. So you have, you're not wasting staff, right? Like, because you have to have an inpatient nurse, and if there's no inpatients, you're eating that cost, right? So if you're taking Medicare in the community, you're pretty much, you're going to have the volume for that. Okay. Now, the cost to build a standalone emergency room used to be around $4 million. It's probably now anywhere between $450 and $650 a foot. Okay. That's a standard, maybe 8 to 9 bed facility. When you build a micro hospital, it was about $1 million per inpatient room. It was about the average, right? So that got you a 9 to 12 bed ER, right? And it got you an OR. So the standard build for 4 to 5 bed micro hospital with a 9 bed ER and 1 OR was around 12 million. Okay. Where people fail is they don't own anything, right? So there's a lot of SBA loans that you can get up to 25 to 50 million. But if you start the clock on that loan because you use that loan to buy the land, you all of a sudden have, a $2 or $3 million note right off the bat, right? So that's where people fail, right? Like, because you haven't jumped into any payroll, you haven't jumped into anything, and you're taking about 1.5 years to build, and you're eating that note for 1.5 years, right?
So how do you avoid that?
So most of the ER groups, what they do is they'll buy the land, right? And they'll sell off anywhere between 15 to 18% to pay off the loan on a capital raise. They take the loan. So let's say the 3 of us decide to do it, right? This is probably how 90% of the emergency rooms are being built now. The 3 of us decide that we're going to be the major owners. We're going to set aside 75% for us, right? And we're going to capital raise 25%. And we're going to do it at approximately, between $200,000 and $300,000 a percentage. That's your land and 6-month buffer of the note as you start to do a drawdown. And they don't put in any money, right? They're taking that loan. They're working while that's happening, and then they start to pay the note right before they open. Once they open, then they take the predominant number of shifts, right? So the payroll goes directly to them, you know, and then maybe they reach to 155 if it's low volume, maybe they don't, but it's yours, right? So you're going to get off the dividend. That's how probably 90% of them are open now, right? Now, that's not the way they're bought, but that's the way they're open, right? The EBITDA on a standalone ER is between 3 to 6. A micro hospital is 8 to 10. Okay. And then the kicker of this is, how much is the EBITDA of a micro hospital with clinics attached to it? It's
How
between
much?
15 to 20x. It's very impressive. I mean, that's why, you know, that's why the market is there, right? I mean, the market is there for this. If it's built correctly, right? You know, you can come out really on top as an owner of one of these things, right? With the type of EBITDA you're talking about. But the beauty of it is really the practice, guys. I mean, I know that we're talking the business, which I love, right? But
Yeah.
when you get, you know, when you're able to combine, you know, individuals here, right, where you're dealing with the IDR, you're doing the billing, man, my surgeons come in happy, man. I mean, like my ER people come in happy. Everybody's happy. They need one job, dude. It's one job. I'm here 24 hours. They're up either all night. Maybe they get some rest. Maybe they don't. But you know, we get almost zero complaints, right? I mean, and by the way, the standard number of complaints, even if you do everything right, is about 10 to 14%. I think we're at like 0.8 to 1% of complaints. It shows with everybody. Per patients. Yeah. I mean, it's when you can incorporate yourself into the business, right? I mean, Miguel, I'm sure you have a lot of stress with it, but it's yours, right? I mean, there's a pleasure in that, right? There's you know, you feel better going there. Like, it's not a job anymore, right? I mean, it's mine. I'm building something that's mine. And of course the money follows, right? I deal with significantly less bureaucracy than you do, you know, because I don't have to worry about prior auths. But the amount of referrals that I send to him, right, you know, from my ER are, I mean, probably better than most primary cares.
Is it fair to say that the freestanding ED frenzy is kind of coming to an end?
Absolutely.
It seems to, right? I mean, it looks like saturated markets. It looks like insurance companies putting pressure, right? Payers becoming more aggressive. I'd say volume struggles, right? To the moment that there's a ton of EDs. And so it's in my view, again, this is all osmosis. I know nothing about this. And half of the time when Adriano speaks about all these numbers, I'm like, I don't understand what he's talking about. But I can tell that one thing that I have understood is literally within the last 10 years, there's a rapid decline of the freestanding ED model. And it seems to me like there's this aggressive increase of the micro hospital model, because in a way, to your point, I think here trying to thread the needle through the whole conversation is it creates a more sustainable market because you have multiple revenue lines that are in a way feeding each other, right? The ED feeds the OR feeds the recoup feeds the this, you know, the labs. And so it's a little micro atmosphere that allows for more stability. It just on the con, I guess, is it needs a little bit more money, right? I mean, so it's harder to think that a one single physician could have the dry powder to pull this off. But I'm guessing, I guess there are people with big pockets.
Well, it's not the pocket, right? So, what did you do well with your clinic, right? It's who do
not
you
a whole lot.
you like you you give yourself more credit, but so it's about finding the right partner, right? So it's like, okay, if I'm going to build a standalone ER, well, then I probably get other ER physicians, right? Does that make sense, right? So, but the other version, you know, with these micro hospitals, you know, if you're going to build it, well, what I need is a surgeon, right? That's a general surgeon for the most part, right? I need, maybe need a hospital. It's not really, right? But you can outsource that. But where does your revenue come from, right? So, I want a general surgeon or vascular surgeon. I want an orthopedic surgeon, right? And that model exists in surgeons, right? Then with the surgical suites, right? But you're only an owner while you operate, right? They feed you 15% or 10% or 20%, depending on your volume. But the second you leave, goodbye, see you later. We're taking back our 20%, right? And if you don't operate, you don't make anything. So for the first year I was at this hospital, I kept the doors open in the ER. I kept them open, right? I kept them open. I made it profitable. And, I added one single question to my nurses when they came in. And I asked, have you had a colonoscopy if they're 50 or above, right? Then we changed it to change it to the to the actual recommendation. So we switched it to 45, right? Just adding that question, I added 50 outpatient colonoscopies the first month. That's it, right? And so who does that? I'm going to do it. Like a doctor's just thinking, right? Like, how can I feed my partner, right? And again, I'm not feeding, anything wrong. This is like every PCP is asking the same question, but probably no ER is asking it. So we're doing around 100 to 120 colonoscopies a month off that question alone, right? Yeah. I have a great staff that calls their primary care and say, hey, we could take care of this for you. And then they send us the referral if we need it, right? So believe it or not, like ran right, the micro hospital not just feeds itself, it allows you to have one place that you get most things from, right? And how much easier would your life be if you're not having, 7 teams to go to 100 different PCPs, right? To get you referrals.
So Adriano, hypothetical here. So say Miguel, established thriving practice in Houston. He has a friend that's an orthopedic surgeon, same scenario. A friend that's a cardiologist, maybe a gastroenterologist, same scenario. And they say, okay, let's open up. And you're in Houston, you know the market. Let's bring Adriano in. Let's open a micro hospital. Walk me through high level. How'd you do it?
So since we're all physicians going by the rules, you'd have to buy the land. That's one version, or you set up a trust, right?
How would you do it? Knowing what you know.
I would probably do it I would love to do it through a trust. The problem with the trust is there's not a lot of good attorneys to set this up well through a trust. So there's probably like 1 or 2 attorneys in the entire city of Houston that do this type of deals. So the easiest way to do it is through the land, right? So you buy the land and you're owners of the land and you'll make your dividend off through the land. That's the easiest way to do it. Okay. Now, the flip side of that is
explain the needy details, like some of the details are, okay, how do I make the money off the land? What's the contract?
Well, it's very simple, right? Yeah. So you do quarterly, so you have a quarterly board meeting, right? And in that board meeting, every quarterly part of your board meeting is, that the landowners want more rent. That's it. You renegotiate the lease every 3 months with yourself, right? And you increase what it is that you want. We want 50,000. We want 40,000. This land is producing for you X number of dollars, right? We want this percentage, and you just keep renegotiating.
That's totally legal.
100%.
Okay. And the trust, how would the trust work? Say you're best friend with the best trust lawyer in Houston.
So the trust makes it so that you're shielded on who the actual owner is. You have a board meeting, and then basically you get distributions that way. So they distribute to you that way. Yeah. And ideally you would have your own separate trust. So nothing ever really touches you, right? Everything goes through a trust. Therefore that trust can buy, either you could take loans from it. Imagine it almost like how Elon Musk does. Like, how does he collect money? Well, it's his shares, right? So he's basically taking loans on his shares. That would be the same concept. You're taking loans from the trust.
And knowing the Houston market, so let's, what would be your strategy in Houston? Because it's probably comparable to other big cities. So So
I'm exactly 20 minutes away.
Strategy for what? Sorry, Lucas.
So where would you put it?
Oh.
Right. So I'm 20 minutes away right now, heading towards Baytown. Right. Right. You know, so really what you want to do is you want to be at a place, right? So, you know, Baytown is one area that's kind of underserved, right? I mean, there's a 7-hour wait, right? It's a blue collar area. So what you do is you do a financial analysis. So now they look at cell phone times, they look at drive times, they look at street times. One of the easiest way to do this is you go to newer neighborhoods and you're right by a Walmart. They did all that research for you. You pay another company to do the research for you, but that is usually insured. That is a $70,000 to $100,000, medium income. Okay. Ironically, in the city of Houston, right? You know, everybody thinks it would be good to do it in the Woodlands, but it's not. Why? It's very affluent. It's too affluent, right? The salaries there are too affluent. They know a cardiologist. I'm not going to go to this micro hospital. I'm going to go, over here, and they're going to wait 3 hours in the emergency room instead of going to your micro hospital. So believe it or not, you want to be in the Walmart area, right? You want to do the traffic. They do traffic patterns. And you want to be at a place that's semi-new, because if you spend too much money on the land, you have to capital raise too much. So the micro hospital right now is about 1.75 to 1.9 million is the most that you should be paying for land. You want to get about an acre and a half to 2 acres, and you're a bit landlocked, right? Like ideally is somewhere between 2.5 and 3, right? So that, that's kind of ideal. Being micro, you're still kind of limited, but you could probably attach a clinic or two to that, right? And that's how you would start,
How much capital would you think on the smallest micro hospital possible? You think you can pull it off with $20 million? Everything?
Oh no, you could pull it 15. You could pull it in $20 million. You got yourself a state of the art. Okay. I mean, you have your MRI built into it, right? You have, you won't have a photon CT, but you'll have a high end, either 256 or 128 Siemens. You need that in order to provide like calcium score CTs, like upper level CTs versus just regular CTs. That gives you more of a reason to keep patients, right? And you're doing more stuff inside the hospital. And by the way, the micro hospital, when we said, is it dying in the ER? It's not that it's dying. The volumes are actually there. There's just no growth, right? So that's why they're not coming us together. The growth is in the micro hospital, right? Because you have multidisciplinary teams. I mean, a micro hospital is basically what insurance is set out to do, to be, everything in network. It's like a Kelsey-Seybold, if you think about it, right? It's bigger, but essentially they have everything there, right? It's the same concept.
Yeah. So you and I have had some discussions, and we're getting here close to the end of the show. So, well, obviously this is the first of hopefully many conversations ranting about business, but you've alluded to the point that you would like at some point in your career to get a hospital, not a micro. Or when you say that, are you talking about micros? Or if it was up to you and you could have it all, would you much rather own a hospital with 200 beds and all the pain in the ass that may probably bring to the table?
I would own. So right now you have some pretty interesting builds. They're just like in houses. They're actually coming to healthcare. Basically pod builds, right?
Okay.
So you get a floor plan, and this is kind of brilliant actually. So you have a floor plan and you make it in pods, right? So most of it is built away from you, right? So that saves you on permits, right? Because you're not building one step and then permitting another step and then permitting. You basically are grabbing a building and bringing it, and it's already permitted. You could build a hospital in 6 months, man. Now it's not as pretty, right? It's not that ivory tower, cement blocking outside, etc. But you can pod build, micro hospitals or ERs And once you buy the land, you set the foundation, apply for permits. Your only expense at that point, is waiting for the pod to be built. That's it. And then dropped off. And then you're just having an inspection. That's it. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. But, I don't want to own a 200 bed. It takes away the passion. And there's nothing better than being able to walk through your entire hospital and see every patient and say hello. It's magic.
What's the sweet spot, do you think, bed-wise?
So again, back to the question, because I don't know if I got an answer. Would you prefer to have a big hospital, or do you like more of the concept of building your own micro hospital?
I'd rather have a 10 to 20 bed micro hospital and build that and put those in the different areas to build. I'd rather own 5 of those or 2 of those or 3 of those or even 1 of those over a major facility. A major facility, listen, you're going to know every single one of your employees. It's as much as I love being an entrepreneur, I also love employing people. Like, I want to know about them. I want to know who they are. I want to know their families.
Yeah.
That's my style. Though I could run a big facility, I wouldn't be passionate. It's just a job. It's a desk job. It would defeat the purpose of why I'm in it.
Yeah. Hospitals suck. You were going to ask something, Lucas? Sorry, I interrupted.
No, he answered it. Like, what would be the sweet spot size?
Yeah.
Because
I mean, if you're talking about $15 million, I mean, it's not difficult.
Let's do it, Miguel.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, you get what? You get 5 guys together. You go to the bank. You get a good idea. You can pull that off. It really isn't that. I mean, I went to the bank with no idea what I had to do and walked out with $2.5 million.
Wow, they give money.
Oh, they did. Yeah. They give money to doctors.
But hey, you know what? They're going to make their money back. I mean, I pay them every fucking month, and everything's going well. Thank God, by the grace of the Lord. But I just say, okay, well, that's me alone. If there's 5 or 7 of me, you could probably get something done. It could be very interesting. And knowing how the appetite that the HCAs and the common spirits have for these, you potentially just say, okay, where's a mothership for HCA? And then move away 50 miles where the next Walmart is, to your point, Adriano. Build a micro, build it, and in 10 years, you can, I don't know.
Wouldn't you make enough money during those 10 years where instead of contributing to the problem by selling your micro hospital, which works perfectly to big, wouldn't you sell it to another physician for less,
dude,
and be able to sleep at night?
Yeah, hold on. I mean, I'm not.
Wait. Hold on. This is actually a very interesting question. Okay, so because you say 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So this hospital that when I started working, they were probably making like $2 million. Okay, with the 10 EBITDA, he could sell for about $350 to $500 million. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
All right. But hold on. Great. You're an owner. And you say to yourself, I can collect this money right now. Right. And now it's one owner. Right. So he's making 35 to 50 million a year. At the end of the day, I don't know if I'd ever really sell at that point, because if it just stays open,
it's like, how much do you need? Exactly.
If it just stays open, right? Like, I'm not going to say let it run to the floor. But you pay the physicians well to work it for you, right? Because that's the key. A lot of doctors just don't want to own. Let's be clear. There's plenty of doctors who just don't want to own. And if you pay them well, they're going to give you the best customer service. They're going to be there. They're going to stay. So
are those the people you want?
Yeah.
You probably want owners because they have the owner mentality. Like not thinking dollars and cents, thinking longevity and purpose. I think thinking longevity and purpose, you want people that have buy-in, no? They're passionate.
No, I disagree with you. As a founder, I don't want a bunch of founder guys that want to be like you. Yeah. By the way, Lucas, you're like, well, I want to be at the table at Hope. I want a piece of equity. I want this. I want that. I'm like, I would rather guys that are like, when you're going to retire. Pay me well, but wait, pay me well, really well, keep me very happy, but I don't want any other nonsense. I don't care about the business. I don't care about how you're doing. Just keep me happy. And I think that's the doctor I need now. Now, what you're saying about who am I going to sell it to? Well, that's a different story.
No, that's what I'm asking.
That's a whole, okay.
That's what I'm asking.
So who would you sell it to?
Yeah.
You asked me the question of how I would do it. So there's one other component of how I would do it, right? So I would always set aside somewhere between 25 and 30%, right? And that does not mean that I'm selling it off. One of the worst things that you can do is sell off those percentages like a founder, right? What I would do with that percentage, whether it's 10%, 15%, or 20, that's where I pay my surgeons. That's where I pay my anesthesiologists or X, Y, and Z. As long as you're with me and you're working, you're going to get this percentage, right? You're going to get 2%, profit. You're going to get 3%, you're going to get 4%, and it adds up to that other 20%, right? 5% to the ER group, 1% to the hospitalist group, and then you have, one general surgeon that's in there every day. You have, an ortho guy. That's the team that you build. And at the end of the day, they make loads of money. You make loads of money, and he's happy as hell. He's not working at 10 other places. He's bringing all of his cases, right? Because he doesn't care to have an outpatient lab if he doesn't need it. He can stack up 10 people, use the staff there, right? And, he's going to make more, right? As an outpatient lab, you don't make 30% of what the hospital makes in a surgery. So in the end, you make more. So that's how I would coordinate it. Like I would, no matter what, leave a percentage on the table for people who are working for me.
Let's do it, guys. Let's fucking do it.
Yeah, here's an idea. Here's an idea for us to talk about another day. But you mentioned IDR multiple times. We didn't really go into it, but that means the process by which you can fight a private payer to essentially pay an actual bill. They will want to, chump change you and pay you peanuts. And you could take them to the federal audit. That means that you have to wait 3 to 6 months for that to resolve. But if it does, it resolves mostly 90% or more on your behalf. And it means that you're going to get a ton more than what they actually wanted to pay you. But it happens, especially when you're out of network. And that's the huge advantage. And so here's a topic for us to maybe discuss in the future is there a way in which we could change this office-based cath lab model that I'm stuck in this site 11 where I have to pre-auth and ask for everybody to permission, knowing that 90% of my patients have dead toes, which is an emergency anyway.
Exactly.
But could we potentially think of a model where Hope could be a freestanding ED, or could it be embedded into embedded into a micro hospital where now I don't need any contracts, no contracts at all. You come in, you get assessed, you get an angio the next day or that day. Are you MPO? Good. Boom. You're going to the table and I'm going to do what I need to do. And then the podiatrist is going to do what they need to do. Because for me, it's all emergency care. I mean, this is terminal vascular care. And I would take them to IDR every single time to get paid what I have to be paid, rather than having to deal with the crumbs and the bullshit that I have to deal with right now. But we don't have time for that today. But I want you guys to noodle on that.
That is. I mean, that's basically, when we talk about let's do it. I'm looking for it, and the first person I'm calling is you and my general surgeon because it's already there. Just like pain management, I get every one of those approved. You're in acute pain and they get spinal injections, use the OR, and you make 15x of what you do in outpatient procedure. That's a facility. The problem is in bigger facilities, Miguel, no one's cutting you that piece, so you don't do it.
Yeah. All right. We have a lot more to talk about this, but I hope that this gets your noggin going, guys out there. Anybody driving, hearing, or thinking that they want to change, you got another idea here. Go for it. Microhospital is the way to go. All right. Thank you, Adriano. Thank you, Lucas, again. And
thank you, Adriano.
We'll see you on the next one.
It's my pleasure, boys.